Hello, my name is Timothy Bennett. I'm the Director of Strategic Healthcare Initiatives at Drummond Group, and I'm here today along with my colleague James Threatte to give you guys a demonstration of Drummond Group's newest certification program for ONC's G10 FHIR API criteria. Drummond has partnered with Aegis, who has built the Touchstone FHIR developers platform and FHIR testing tool. And we feel that this testing tool provides our customers with just a high level of value as you are developing your FHIR implementation ahead of certification. So why is another test tool necessary when ONC provides the Inferno test tool that anyone can freely use? Well, our answer goes back several years, like I mentioned, when Drummond realized and understood that patient access and bulk data were just the first FHIR use cases that being pushed forward by both ONC and CMS regs, and then a more FHIR use cases and regs are coming down the road in the future, and a more comprehensive FHIR testing certification strategy was going to be needed for health IT developers in the marketplace. And so Drummond thus formed this strategic partnership with Aegis to meet this challenge head on. Both of our organizations have this long history in testing certification, and this Touchstone platform that Aegis developed is the leading comprehensive FHIR testing platform out there. And, it's been, used for years now in connectathons and, to help with FHIR IG development of the implementation guides themselves and reference server platforms. And, we just saw at Drummond a lot of value that our customers at Drummond could use for their own development purposes. And so, with this emerging goal to build the industry's most comprehensive FHIR certification program, it just made a lot of sense for Drummond to form this alliance with Aegis, technology partner, for providing this platform to our customers. So we initially launched a program a year and a half ago or so using the Touchstone platform for the payer community to test and certify those FHIR implementations for patient access and interoperability according to CMS's final rule. And there was some overlap with CMS's final rule with ONC's 21st Century Cures final rule for FHIR APIs. And so Drummond sort of leveraged that test script development that we did with Aegis for the CMS program and took it to ONC and went through a year-long approval process and had the Touchstone platform and these test scripts that we developed approved for testing the certification for the G10 criteria. So, the purpose here was that our customers could use the Touchstone platform, get some value to their development teams that this, FHIR testing tool from Aegis, this Touchstone tool, could provide them, but then be able to use that with Drummond Group to get their G10 certification as well. And so, beyond, our plans for, offering this tool for G10 certification, the plans are that coming down the road, there'll be more FHIR regulation from CMS and ONC both, and that, our customers that decide to use the Touchstone platform will be well positioned, not only here in the present to get certified to G10, but also be ready for the next FHIR use cases that Fed regs are going to mandate that we'll support here on the Touchstone platform as well. So with that being said, I'm going to turn over this demo to my colleague James Threatte, who will give you a tour through the Touchstone platform and how show you how Touchstone can help your fire development team build their fire implementations quicker, faster, and more efficient. And of course, as always, be compliant to certification testing while you're doing that. James, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Tim. My name is James Threatte. I am the Test Lab Director at Drummond Group. We are an authorized testing laboratory for ONC and doing 2015 edition certification. Just by way of my background, I've been with Drummond Group for 3 years doing certification testing. Prior to that, I was the product manager at an EHR, and I myself led our team and did certification back in 2018. So I've been on both sides of this now. I like to say my goal is to help my clients get certification done with less hassle and frustration than I experienced. I hope I've done a good job with that, but what I'm really excited about is to show you this Touchstone test tool today. This is something that I wish that I had when we certified G7, 8, and 9. So if you're familiar with the Cures update, you'll be aware that G10 is now replacing G8. And there's a series of new implementation guides and requirements that fire servers need to meet that are put up by EHRs. So Touchstone is a testing tool, as Tim mentioned, that is very widely used in the fire community. It's used at all of the connectathons. It's used by the implementation guide developers to build and test their IGs. The really great thing about Touchstone and really the difference between Touchstone and Inferno. Inferno is a great tool. It does exactly what it's supposed to, tests all of the G10 requirements. However, there is some feedback that would be useful to developers that are building their own server. This Touchstone test tool and alternate test method is really just for developers building their own fire server. And you'll see here in a few moments in the demo the kind of feedback that it gives you. But Touchstone enables developers to do what's called test-driven development. The developer can build out some fire resources and then jump over here to Touchstone and test them. Get feedback right away, go back and fix their code, or if everything is good, move on to the next resource, and really enables developers to build to the test. We think it's a lot better for that than Inferno. Inferno will test G10, but it doesn't make the kind of feedback that we feel developers really need to build out G10. So I'm excited to be here today and show this to you. I was involved with the application process, and I was really happy that we were working on putting Touchstone out there as an alternate test method. So let me show you why. All right, you should be seeing my shared screen. This is the login screen for Touchstone. This is accessible at touchstone.com. Right before I log in, let me just make show something here. There is a register link, and so Touchstone does support a free account. So after my demo today, you feel free to go to touchstone.com, click register, create your own account, and click around, see it for yourself. The first thing I'd like to show is the organization setup here in Touchstone. What you'll see are the public organizations. You'll see that there's hundreds and hundreds of records here, all the largest companies as well as the smallest companies in our industry. You can probably find that they have an account with various users. So a lot of people in our industry have seen the benefits of the Touchstone test tool, and I'd like to just show that you can see which organizations are part. Another thing that's nice about Touchstone is that multiple users can be set up for an organization, which allows you to see each other's test results. You'll also be able to see a history of all test results, test executions from all of your different users in your organization. And you can also set permissions to restrict who can see what test executions and who can do what test executions. All right, the next thing I'd like to show are the test system setups. What you'll see here are test systems that have been input from all sorts of different organizations. You can filter down to your own organization test servers. However, many organizations choose to make their servers available to the public, and you can also test against those servers as well. Just really quickly, I want to show you the setup for one of these servers. This is for the Inferno reference server. So those of you familiar with Inferno and having done the demo test would have seen Inferno reference server in action. That's what Inferno is testing against. And you can see there's some setup items here. You can determine who it can be viewed by, who can run tests against it, who can modify it. You can see all sorts of different setup parameters, endpoints here, OAuth 2, Smart on FHIR. We also would need to support JWT for bulk data. And there's numerous options here for any organization to test. Very quickly, we can talk about the Inferno bulk data. And as I mentioned, JWT, and you can put in your setup here. So the testing and the system setup will be functionally equivalent to Inferno. But here in a moment, I'll show you what the differences are with your error messages. Touchstone works with conformance suites. And on the conformance suites page, you'll see all of the different conformance suites that are supported. Really quickly, I'll just flash through them. But you can see that there's numerous conformance suites here, DaVinci, Karen Blue Button, even just FHIR standard conformance testing. So there's a lot of power in all the different tests that are here. For G10, we are only just going to focus on the cures tests. So that's these 6 tests. You'd actually only do 5. There's 2 variations of this one. So these are pretty analogous to what you'll see in Inferno, where there's 6 different pages of different tests. And so these 5 conformance suites more or less correspond to those pages. For today's demo, I'm going to run the public server against the Inferno reference server confidential client setup. First thing you'll notice are these circles up here at the top. These are a graphical representation of test results. So what they really enable you to see here, and just so you know how to read them, the center circle is going to be the entire test. And then of that entire test, so in this diagram, there are 3 segments on the perimeter of that center circle. So that means that there's 3 tests comprising this entire suite. So you can see that those 3 tests are down here. And then you can also tell from the color of the segment what the result of that test was. So a red means a fail, a green means pass, and a yellow means pass with warnings. So you can really quickly see how you did as well as drill down into exactly what there was problems with, you know. So that's kind of a nice feature there. There's also some tables here with the statistics as well as some key to these diagrams. So for today's demo, I'm just going to run these two tests. And as I mentioned, I'm going to use the confidential client server against the public client test suite. And the reason for that is because Inferno reference server will obviously pass G10 testing. So showing you all passes is not going to be as entertaining. I want to show you something, a fail, and what you're looking at when you see a fail. So running these two tests against the wrong server will give us a result that would show a representative result. So when you do the launch, you'll see this OAuth 2 authorization screen showing all the request scopes, the URL, some of the other details. And from here, I would just click continue. Those of you familiar with Inferno reference server and demoing Inferno will be familiar with this screen. I'm just going to choose one of the patients and approve all scopes. And we will see our results down here. So these have now updated. What you'll see, this passed is green, and that's just a pass. There's also pass with warnings. Pass with warnings will take you into this screen. So you'll see that out of all of these tests that were run as part of this test script, 4 of them passed without warnings. 2 of them did have warnings. So let me show you what the warnings are. All right, on this test, we see that there's warnings for various endpoints and scopes supported in the well-known smart configuration. You can see from the description, these are recommended. So these would be examples of best practices that are not quite required by G10, but ideally all systems would have. Specifically in this example, this would be the well-known configuration comparing to the capability statement, and they both having the same information, as well as these recommended items, which are best practices. Going into the next test, which failed, I'm going to expand the test to see the results. And what we see here is that in this operation, OAuth 2 get token, we got a 401 unauthorized. And right here in the first assert, the response expected is a 200 or a 201. So right away, we can see that the expected value was not what was actually returned. And you'll see that there's a number of errors there. This is an example of cascading errors. So in this example, the Touchstone tool was unable to get the token. And as a result, all of the various tests based on that have failed. Also, I want to point out here, when you're looking at the results, that there is not only a description as well as links to definition and different details, but you can also see what was requested. And you see here what was sent to your server, as well as what your server returned. So here in the response body, we see status 401. So, that lines up with what we saw in the error messages, and it is expected because we ran the public client test with the confidential client server. So this is just an example of something that you might see, but I think it goes very far towards showing the kind of feedback that you would get. So having failed this test, you can get a sense of, when I received this request, why is it returning a 401 and not a 200, 201? So it really gives you the kind of detail that your developers need to go back in and figure out what the problem was. One more thing I want to show are some of the other features here in Touchstone. For example, there is a history feature, and that will show all the different test executions that I or anyone in my organization or my organization group or with my organization test systems have run. So you can get history going pretty far back. So if something is passing or failing now that passed before, you can easily dive in and see what changed. So that's another powerful feature that you may not get on the Inferno test tool public instance. If you install it on your own server, then you would have a history there, but the public instance does get wiped on a regular basis. So you would not have access to all that past history. Another great feature in Touchstone is the ability to view the results and publish them to a public URL. The public URL is useful if you ever wanted to share results with somebody outside of your organization, an end user that has a question or anybody else that wants to verify compliance. And so all of these results can be published. They're not automatically published, but you can publish them if you wanted to share them. And that would be accessible through a unique URL, which only you would have, that you would provide outside. Let me also show you an example of the clinical data tests. This is actually one of the more comprehensive tests in Touchstone and corresponds to the Inferno single patient API test suite. So I'm going to run the clinical data suite against the Inferno confidential client server. I'm going to select all except for the limited access test, just so that we can keep this brief. All right, so we get our OAuth 2 authorization screen with our scopes, with our URL, with different details of the test. Connecting in to the patient picker and Inferno reference server, I'm going to just choose the patient again. All right, and we can see it's running. Touchstone does automatically refresh as different tests are completed. So we would give it some time here, but let me point out, capability statement received a warning. And so here's a warning about the capability statement that is suggested but not required. The unrestricted access test passed without warnings, but body height did have a warning. You can see in this warning that vital signs was expected, but the server returned vital dash signs. So that's a warning, not a fail-worthy test result. Right, and we're going down with passed and with warnings. This test can actually take a few minutes, but it's the kind of thing that you can start and then go refill your coffee and come back to. All right, the tool has completed testing clinical data for the Inferno reference server. And just wanted to scroll down here through the results. You can see some of the warnings there. There are a couple of known issues, and that's what the reason for the fails are. But you can see all the tests have been completed and Inferno reference server does pass. And you can also see here in the circles, you know, that there was some warnings. There was the one error. And for the most part, this server passed.